everyone. Today I'm going to kind of go back over the lesson that we did in the last class and then build on it. Today's lecture is going to be a little bit longer than normal because I am going to go over the 11 body systems that's covered in your textbook. Then over the next several class periods, you guys are going to be working on an independent poster board project. So bear with me as we go through these, and if you have any questions, please make sure you email me or come up and ask. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. In the last class, we talked about anatomy and how it's the structure and shape of the body and its parts. So what does something look like and where is it located in relation to another organ? For example, where is your stomach located compared to your lungs? Then we learned about how there's two types of anatomy. The first one is gross anatomy. These are large structures that you're able to see without a microscope. So you can look at them and see the heart, the bones, the brain, lungs, and even fingernails. Then we gave the example with the digestive system, where we can see a stomach, we can see the esophagus. The other part of anatomy is microscopic anatomy, and this is probably the part of A&P that you really haven't seen too much of. This is where we delve deeper in looking at the cells and tissues that make something up. So specific types of cells like goblet cells, or our example that we had were parietal cells and chief cells. The last part we kind of talked about was the second part of anatomy and physiology, the physiological side. This is not only the study of what something looks like, but physiology is how it functions. How is a nerve impulse sent? How does blood get pumped by the heart? What causes a signal to go from our brain all the way down to our hand? And then please note that this class, anatomy and physiology, are inseparable. They belong to each other. It's hard to talk about one without talking about the other. And the key statement I always use is structure determines what functions can occur. A good example of this is structure is going to determine a lot of things in life. For example, if you want a coat that's function is to keep you warm, you're going to pick a coat that has a structure of being pretty thick and warm or consisting of wool. Same thing with the body. Air sacs in our lungs have to be very, very thin. That's its structure. And this allows it to perform its function of exchanging gases. So throughout this text, we're going to see a lot of different concept links on how to connect things to help us gain a better understanding of each individual system, but know that all systems are related. And that leads us into the new things that we're going to talk about today. We're first going to talk about the levels of organization and then delve deeper into the 11 different types of body systems or organ systems. So our 6 levels are atoms. In your notes, atoms are also sometimes called molecules because 2 or more atoms can come together to form a molecule if you've taken chemistry. Molecules will come together to form cells, which are the basic unit of all of life. These come together to form tissues. Tissues come together to form organs. Organs come together to form organ systems, and these all work together to create an organism. In your notes, there's blanks after tissues, organs, organ systems, and organisms. What I'm kind of looking for you to fill in is a definition of those. So if we look at this, first we have atoms that combine to form molecules. This is our chemical level. Then cells are made up of these molecules. Down here, our tissue level, this is the part I kind of was looking for you to fill in your notes. Tissues are made up of similar types of cells. So a lot of smooth muscle tissues together, or smooth muscle cells together, will make smooth muscle tissue. These different types of tissues come together and work together to make up something known as an organ. So smooth muscle tissue can come together with epithelial tissue and connective tissue to form a blood vessel. These different organs come together to make something called an organ system. So blood vessels, along with the heart, make up the cardiovascular system. And then a bunch of different organ systems that we're going to talk about next make up an organism. So let's go over these organ systems. Hopefully, these shouldn't sound too new to you. Most of them you guys have heard of or at least talked about in junior high. Most of these are talked about in everyday life, so let's go ahead and discuss them. So, our first one is going to be the integumentary system. This forms all of our external, and external I mean outside, body coverings. So, these include things like our skin, even our hair and fingernails. Major functions of this system is to waterproof the body. There's like a waxy covering on our skin that prevents us from profusely losing water to our environment. For example, we even try to use different lotions that are hydrating to keep our skin hydrated. Our skin also provides cushion and protects our deeper tissues from injury. It's our first line of defense. It's usually what's injured with a cut, but it prevents our organs deep inside from getting hurt. It also helps produce vitamin D with the help of sunlight. It excretes salts in perspiration, and if you've never heard of perspiration, that is when you're sweating. This also helps us regulate body temperature. As we sweat, it helps cool us down because water is being evaporated and heat's being pulled away from our skin. And then last but not least, this is the location of cutaneous, and all cutaneous means is skin nerve receptors. This helps us see if something is hot, cold, if there's a pressure, or do I feel pain. So here's an outline that your book gives you of your integumentary system. And as a reminder, your online textbook can be found on my classroom website under helpful links and resources. The second body system is the skeletal system. Most people recognize this one and know, oh, bones. But it's also made up of cartilage, which is a flexible material that makes up your bridge of your nose, your top of your ears, or even between your vertebrae and your back. It also includes ligaments, and ligaments attach bone to bone, and then even joints like your elbow joint or your knee joint. The whole function of the skeletal system is to support the body, and it gives it a framework where muscles can attach and cause movement. Skeletal system is also the site of blood cell formation. Blood forms in the middle of a bone or at the ends. And that's why if you hear anyone go in to get blood drawn out of a hip for a transplant to see if they're a donor, they're going to stick a long needle into their hip bone. And then they also store important minerals. And we're going to learn some important minerals are things like calcium. This isn't in your notes, but you can also add it protects vital organs such as your brain or your spinal cords, or your ribs protect your heart. So here's an example of our skeletal system. The third one is the muscular system. This is composed of muscles that help produce movement when they contract. Oh, I'm going to go back and just kind of point out that muscles do more than just locomotion or movement. It also allows us to make facial expressions. So smile, furrow our brows, give a scowl. It helps us maintain our posture or sitting upright and produces heat to warm our body as well. The fourth system is the nervous system. And honestly, this is one of the longest chapters I spend on during the school year because the nervous system does so much and it's such a big part of our body. It's our control system and it's pretty fast acting. So you can touch something and in a split second get a signal to pull your hand away from something hot. Your nervous system contains your brain, your spinal cord, all the nerves throughout your body, and then even something called sensory receptors. Now, let's talk about this real quick. The nervous system responds to internal and external stimuli. Stimuli is kind of a word you've never heard of, but these are signals. So, internal signals might be your stomach's empty, and so it's going to tell your brain that it's hungry and you're going to growl. External stimuli are going to be like touching a hot stove. Your body's going to sense that that stove's hot and it causes you to pull your hand back. These sensory receptors detect changes. So if I have a pain receptor and it's signaled, I'm going to pull my hand back away from that source of pain. Another sensory receptor is, for example, you might see that a stoplight turns from red to green. This message is going to be sent to your brain or your central nervous system. It's going to take in and assess all this information and then activate muscles to do its job. So if you see a light go from red to green, it's going to send a signal to your brain, and your brain's going to send a signal to your foot to push down the pedal. Please note that when you see pictures of nervous system, whenever you see yellow, yellow is always going to equal nerves that are shown. The next one is your endocrine system. This is our second major control system, but instead of being fast acting like the nervous system, this one is slow acting. It slowly secretes chemical molecules called hormones into the blood. Common endocrine system glands are things like your pituitary gland, thyroid, parathyroids, your adrenal, thymus, pancreas, which releases insulin, your pineal gland, which allows you to sleep, releases melatonin, ovaries, and testes. Now, one thing to note is I don't actually cover the endocrine system within this chapter because a lot of them are embedded into the other chapters, and I run out of time towards the end of the year. But it's very important that know that these play a big role. Body functions include control of growth, reproduction, and use of nutrients. So here's an example of where all those at. We talk about your pineal and pituitary gland when we go over the nervous system, and then we also talk about your pancreas when we go over the digestive system. The sixth one is your cardiovascular system. Sometimes this one is known as your circulatory system, depending on what textbook you read out of. This is going to be the body system that includes the heart and blood vessels. Your heart pumps the blood and it's transported through vessels to different parts of your body. Things that it transports are things like oxygen and carbon dioxide. Now remember, oxygen is needed for cellular respiration or to make energy. Nutrients from food are also transported, and even hormones. Now, blood is more than just red blood cells. It also contains white blood cells and other chemicals that help protect from foreign invaders. When you note blood vessels, note that red usually means oxygen rich blood vessels, and blue means oxygen poor. Your blood is not actually blue, it's just depicted that way, so please don't get that confused. The next system is your lymphatic system, and this is usually talked about hand in hand with the cardiovascular system because it complements it. Usually, these vessels are running similarly to the blood vessels, and they return leaked fluids back into that bloodstream. These include things like lymphatic vessels, nodes, and organs. Oftentimes, if you're sick, you might go to the doctor's office and they might feel for lumps or nodes in your throat or neck area, and that's just to see if these lymph nodes are swollen. And that the reason for this is because this is often a major place where you guys get infections or white blood cells go to fight infections. The reason for this is because they often clean the blood and they house white blood cells, which are involved in immunity. In the past, people have known the lymphatic system as the immune system. Oftentimes, when you see the lymphatic system, you're going to see it as green. One thing to note is that lymphatic system runs all over and it does return fluid to your cardiovascular. They're all connected. So if you have known or anybody in your family has had cancer, you never want it to spread to the lymph nodes because then it can go to the rest of the body and that's going to be highly damaging. The eighth one is your respiratory system. This includes things like your nasal passages, that's like your nose. Your pharynx is your throat. Your larynx is your voice box. Your trachea is your windpipe. And then your bronchi will eventually go into your lungs. This is where gas is exchanged, and what happens is you often pick up oxygen and you remove carbon dioxide. So here's a good representation of it. I know in the drawing that you guys had the other day, pharynx, larynx, and trachea were some of the ones that I put on there. The ninth one is your digestive system. This includes the oral cavity known as your mouth, your esophagus, stomach, small and large intestine, rectum, and any accessory organs. And when I mean accessory organs, I mean like things that break down food, like your teeth or your tongue. Even things like your liver or your gallbladder, and even your pancreas releases pancreatic juices to break down food. The whole point of the digestive system is to break down food. The nutrients from this food are absorbed to the blood for them to be dispersed to the other cells. It also reabsorbs water and eliminates anything that it can't use in the form of feces. The 10th organ system is your urinary system. Now, sometimes we get to the urinary system and sometimes we don't. It depends on how far we get in the school year. These are going to include kidneys, which looks like a little bean, your ureters, your urinary bladder, and your urethra. So oftentimes the function is going to be eliminating nitrogenous waste. And this is your guys' urine. Urine is created in the kidneys. It travels through the ureters where it is stored in the urinary bladder. Once that bladder gets too full, your urine is emptied out through the urethra and eventually out of either a vagina or a penis. It helps maintain acid-base balance, or also known as your pH balance, and it regulates water or electrolyte balance. For example, maybe you've drank enough water and so you urinate more. Or maybe you haven't drank enough water, so you're not going to urinate as often. And this helps regulate our blood pressure levels. And the very last system, this one I do not cover in the school year because I got told that you guys should be learning about this in your health class. But regardless, I will do a quick overview. The reproductive system's function is to produce an offspring or a child, a new organism. So for males, their reproductive system includes testes, scrotum, which is where the balls are located, your penis, accessory glands, and the duct system known as vas deferens. Sperm are produced in your testes, and then the duct system carries that to the exterior where it can be fertilized with an egg. For females, we have ovaries that are produce and release eggs. Within the uterine tubes, this is where an egg can meet a sperm and get fertilized. It will travel down those uterine tubes where it will eventually plant in the uterus. And if there's a successful implantation, a fetus begins to develop. And once the fetus has cooked in the mother long enough, it will be delivered through the vagina, which is the opening to the woman's reproductive system. So there's quite of an overview of the different body systems that we will be covering this year. Like I said, we won't be covering them all, but we will be covering a majority of them. And like I said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and I hope you guys have a great day.